I spent 30 years in the service of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, upholding her peace, and to the best of my ability, I prevented and detected offences against that peace. Her Royal Highness personified all that is best about the Commonwealth, a union that encompasses many countries, creeds and colours. Character traits like service, decency, courtesy, restraint, tolerance, faith, and hope. Values like democracy, the rule of law, and individual liberty. Let us never forget men and women came from all of the Commonwealth to defend God, however conceived, crown, and country. Of course, this includes Indigenous Australians, and I was acquainted with Torres Strait Islander men from the 51st Torres Strait Light Infantry who defended our country in those dark days. Service to God, Queen and country isn't a punchline to me, any more than it is to those that risked all for those principles. I was inspired by them, by my ancestors, and Her Majesty's example to serve, to honour our history, and contribute as best as I could to my country, Commonwealth, Crown, and all of our collective future. I don't regret that. I resolved early in my life that I would not be the weak link in the chain of my country's continued history, and God willing, neither will my children, or indeed their children. For all the flaws, the faults, and for the imperfections of our ancestors, they still brought things forward, created this magnificent society that we all, regardless of station or background, are privileged to live in. Her Majesty, unlike so many today, understood what she was inheriting. She was the embodiment of a transcendent vision, an idea of rule of law, and of an understanding that every temporal power is subject to a higher power. She was fortunate through birth to inherit that privilege, but all of us here in Australia, and indeed throughout the Commonwealth generally, are inheritors of that same legacy, a legacy of incredible social infrastructure, institutions that uphold democracy, the opportunity to create, retain wealth. She showed that gratitude through her service, and perhaps because she was exposed to so much, she understood how precious and fragile our institutions and our infrastructure really is. Her Majesty was only 1 year old when the brilliant Catholic priest and professor of physics Georges Lemaitre first discovered and described the Big Bang Theory. She witnessed the Great Depression. She served in the Territorial Army as an ambulance driver and truck mechanic. For Australians, that would be comparable to the Army Reserve Transport Corps. During her reign, hot conflicts in Borneo, Malaya, Korea, and Vietnam occurred. The space race started and finished. While sadly, socialism and its many variants and collectivist manifestations remain alive and well, the Soviet Empire, which was born only shortly before she was, died before she did. She saw the rise of terrorism and other extremist threats to our democracy. She witnessed, lived and reigned in the most tumultuous times of world history, and through her maintenance of tradition and faith, managed to preserve the upward direction of human progress. The influence was both direct and indirect. There are 54 nations in the Commonwealth. That's about 2.5 billion. That's more than the population of the United States and China combined. Now, not all of those people are direct subjects of Her Majesty. Only Commonwealth realms are. And there are about 15 Commonwealth realms, meaning there are about 151 million subjects of the Crown. It's her firm but soft hand on the rudder of the ship of state that ensured that the Commonwealth endured all the seismic changes without major changes in form or function. It's perhaps no coincidence that she died on the Nativity, the birthday of Mary, the Queen of Heaven. And while the position of Queen of Heaven is already taken, I'm sure Mary would be happy to have Elizabeth as a handmaiden. In death, as she was in life, Elizabeth II will be in service to a greater good. God speed you, madam, to your room in Heaven's palace. London Bridge has fallen. The Queen is dead, and we miss you already. but long live the king.